Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Danielle, aka Stitcherista here on YouTube, and today is another stitch with me while I continue working on Modern Folk Embroidery's Fruits of Plenty sampler. I am working this with DMC 3750 and DMC 958, and I am stitching it on 28 count Joblin in the color Lamb's Wool. I am liking this sampler very much. This will be my first sampler I've ever done that is this large. Anyway, today is also a true crime story time. Life is going along normally, so nothing really to report there. So we are just going to get right into the true crime story. So today's story is about Constance Fisher, who, before Andrea Yates drowned her children, there was this woman. So I'm going to give you a warning. If you have trouble with children dying, you might want to skip this one. So, born in 1929. So yeah, a while away from Andrea Yates for sure. Born in 1929, Mary Teresa McConnell was adopted by Sylvia and Rose Siroy. At that time, she became Mary Constance Siroy. Constance Mary would be the name that she would be known by. Young Constance attended the Mount Morici School in Waterville, Maine from 1934 to 1938, and then went to a public school before being sent to the Sacred Heart Academy in Jackman, Maine. She then attended Mount Morici High. I don't even know if I'm saying all these names right. The young Constance came out of school deeply religious. She loved reading the Bible and by all accounts was considered quite intelligent with an IQ of 133. You know, I've always wanted to take my IQ just to see. Do you guys remember the Seinfeld episode where Elaine took the IQ test for George? That's a really good episode. So, an online IQ guide considers a person with 133 IQ to be gifted. In 1945, at the age of 16, Constance took a job as a baker's assistant in the Harris Bakery in Waterville. She did this for about a year and a half, and it was during this time that Constance met Carl Fisher. And it wasn't what one would call a long courtship. Constance and Carl were married on June 29th, 1946, so barely a year, I'm guessing. Constance was 17 while Carl was 26. Jesus. Wow. You know, let me tell you, big difference in thought process and all of that between a 17-year-old and a 26-year-old. That's 9 years difference. Now, 9 years when you're like 40 and 49, not that big of a deal. Just saying. So the newlyweds moved in with Carl's parents for a while, but the situation wasn't the greatest. Yeah, I don't want to live with my parents again. No. They decided that they needed their privacy and were able to buy a cabin out on Snow Pond, which was about 10 miles from Waterville. If the young couple thought that life with Carl's parents was tough, they had another thing coming. The features at Snow Pond did not include running water or an indoor toilet. Fuck you, no. Nope. No. It's funny because Bill and I like to watch the show like where people like buy off the grid. And as soon as they say like no toilet, I'm like, I'm out. Like, no. So life at Snow Pond gave a whole new meaning to the phrase roughing it. And it was hard work, especially for a young woman. Yeah. In 1948, Constance became pregnant. A son, Richard, was born, and 2 years later, Daniel was born. And in 1953, the family was complete when Deborah was born. After the birth of Deborah, though, Constance slowly began to change. She was often depressed, and when she stopped breastfeeding Deborah, she began to hear voices. It was almost always a male voice with the same message. At the beginning, the voices told her there was a way out of her depression. All she had to do was commit suicide and all of the pain would be gone. I really feel for people that experience things like this. It has to be so awful and traumatic. So then in January of 1954, there was a warning sign. Carl was at work when Constance wrapped a scarf around the baby's neck and pulled it tight. Oh my God. Deborah's screams seemed to snap Constance out of it. She dropped the scarf and called Carl at work. Carl raced home, or about as fast as his 1949 Ford would go. Both Carl and Constance knew that something was very wrong. The voices weren't just telling Constance to kill herself anymore. Now they were telling her to murder the kids as well. I have to give Constance and Carl both credit here because it seems like that they were on it. They were going to try to stop it. She didn't want to be like that, obviously, right? You don't want to be feeling like that towards your children. So you got to remember, though, this is 1954. This is the year my mother was born. I wonder if my grandmother ever experienced something like that. You know, my grandmother had 3 children, so, she unfortunately is not here any longer for me to ask her that, but yeah. So their doctor had a couple of suggestions, the first of which was to tell the couple to get out of Snow Pond. It was a hard life, and the doctor thought it might have something to do with Constance's depression. Yeah, maybe. He also prescribed a sedative to help Constance get some much-needed sleep and phenobarbital to help with her daytime anxiety. I'm telling you, if you don't get proper sleep, it can literally make you crazy. He also gave her a bottle of shampoo for her psoriasis, telling Constance to make sure she kept it from the kids because it did contain small amounts of poison. Okay. The doctor also scheduled Constance for a follow-up appointment on February 4th. The couple agreed with the doctor and were able to sell the cabin at Snow Pond and turn a bit of a profit. They soon packed up and moved back to Waterville. They moved into the top floor of a duplex at 31 High Street. It looked like the move back to Waterville was going to pay dividends. It was good for Carl. He worked in the car shops at the Main Central Railroad in Waterville, but it was Constance that Carl was worried about. Waterville had an instant support system for Constance because her foster parents lived just minutes away, so when Constance needed any help, her foster mom would come right out to help with the children. If Constance was depressed, her foster mom would show up with her 2 daughters and all would go out shopping. They would help in any way possible to lift Constance out of her depression, and for now it seemed to be working. At the February 4th appointment with the doctor, Constance said she never felt better. She told the doctor she wished the family had left Snow Pond a lot earlier. However, that dark cloud of depression was never very far away. Despite the best efforts of family, friends, and doctors, Constance started hearing those voices again. They were still telling her that suicide would solve all of her problems. Then they started mentioning the children. After all, they would be a lot better off if they were in heaven as well. No. Then came March 8th, 1954. It was a Monday. Constance was still a young 24-year-old mother of 3. Carl had gone to work and Richard was at school when the voices finally got to her. Baby Deborah was now 11 months old and offered no resistance as her mother slid her head under the water in the old white porcelain bathtub. Oh, I fucking can't. My God. Constance then carried the baby into a bedroom and put her to bed and covered her with blankets. Next, Daniel, who was 4, was no match for his mother's strength. He was also put to bed beside his baby sister and covered with blankets. 6-year-old Richard was in a hurry to get home and see his mom. It briefly gave Constance pause as she said she would run him a hot bath. She played with her oldest son for a while before forcing his head under the water. Richard, at 6 years old, was a little stronger and fought hard. Constance had to fucking... Jesus! My God. She had to get in the tub herself to hold him under until he was dead. And she left Richard face down in the tub, and after he was dead, she wrote a note saying, "It was so hard to do, but God told me it was the only way I could save them. They are now in heaven, safe forever from evil. I hope you will forgive me. Please forget all about us. Maybe you don't think I loved them. I did. Oh, I did. My heart is breaking. I loved you, and I loved them. Then she drank half of the bottle of shampoo that the doctor had given her. Remember, he said that there was poison in it. Then she wrapped herself in an electric blanket and she waited to die. But let me guess, she probably doesn't die because that's how that fucking happens, right? So Carl comes home from work and walks in the front door calling out to Constance. He receives no reply and then walked into the bathroom where he saw what no parent should ever have to see. His son Richard was lying face down in the water, and he ran through the rest of the house and found Deborah and Daniel dead on the bed, all three of his children gone. Meanwhile, Constance, just like I fucking said, of course she survived the suicide attempt. She was taken to a hospital for treatment and then arrested, and she was eventually charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution didn't really go all out in an effort to secure a murder conviction. There was much sympathy for Constance, and she was eventually found not guilty by reason of mental disease. She was committed to the Augusta State Hospital. Later known as the Augusta Mental Health Institute, the hospital had a new way of treating their patients. Oh boy. Remember, this is 1954? Dr. Isaac Ray and Dr. Francis Sleeper were both superintendents at the hospital. They believed that an agitated or sick brain could heal itself with a healthy lifestyle. The hospital promoted sports, games, art, music, and other activities meant to stimulate the brain. There were also what they called work farms, where patients could achieve a sense of accomplishment and benefit from outdoor activity. That reminds me of The Handmaid's Tale. All of these women having a duty, like work. Yeah. As the way doctors treated mental health evolved, so did Constance's diagnosis. So according to records, Constance was diagnosed at different times as having paranoid schizophrenia, postpartum depression, and psychosis. She was also thought to be sociopathic with a dissociative disorder. From the time Constance entered the hospital, her husband Carl was her staunchest supporter, which I'm trying to imagine if Bill and I had children and I killed them all, I can't imagine he would be supportive of me. I don't see that. Carl was very vocal in his support for his wife, lobbying tirelessly for her release. Several members of the staff did not like the way the wind was blowing. One doctor suggested that Constance should be sterilized and not allowed to have any more children. Okay, maybe. Others were puzzled by what they perceived to be a lack of remorse. However, despite these misgivings, Constance was a free woman in 1959, 5 years after entering the hospital. She still maintained that the children were better off because they were already in heaven. Constance says she knew that because the voices told her so, and Constance believed the voice was the voice of God. She should have never been let out of there. Constance and Carl decided to stick to... Oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me. No. Nope. No. Constance and Carl decided to stick together, and before 1959 was out, she was pregnant again. I can't. Kathleen was born in 1960, and the couple didn't stop there. It almost appears like they were trying to replace the 3 kids that died. Michael was born in 1962, and the family was complete once more when Natalie was born in October 1965. Again, like with Deborah 12 years earlier, the voices got louder when Constance stopped breastfeeding her 3rd child, Natalie. June 30th, 1966 must have seemed an awful lot like March 8th, 1954 to Carl Fisher. Once again, he came home from work to find one of his children dead in the bathtub. This time, it was 9-month-old baby Natalie that had been left in the water. Kathleen, 6, and Michael, 4, were found in a bed covered with blankets. All had been drowned. I don't know how Carl doesn't, kill himself, because you would feel utterly, completely responsible. So Carl runs from the house, and it's about a quarter of a mile to the nearest neighbor with a telephone. He never returned to the house. Like she had done 12 years earlier, Constance left another note saying, "I'm sorry I have to do this. I haven't done a proper job of raising the children. They will be better off in heaven." She also attempted once again to commit suicide, and this time she was in a coma due to an overdose of pills, but she survived. Again. And once again faced 3 first-degree murder charges. This gives me such a big pause. Like, are you fucking kidding me right now? The trial took place in 1967. Dr. Walter Rome practiced medicine at the Augusta State Hospital. He testified for the defense and told the court that Constance suffered from oneirophobia. I don't even know if I said that right, but it is the fear of dreams. And the doctor said that for Constance, it would be like living in a nightmare. According to the doctor, Constance would have endured complete despair and desperation. And in that state, she would have felt there was no hope for herself or her children. Constance was once again found not guilty by reason of insanity, and she was sent back to the Augusta State Hospital. She shouldn't be let out. John Benoit is a former state senator from Maine, as well as a retired judge. So he is quoted as saying, "I can see it all now. That autopsy room and that small youngster only 24 inches long on that table. It knocks you to your knees. You never get over that." The people of Maine seemed split when it came to their feelings about the case and about Constance. John Benoit is quoted as saying, again, "I think there was some anger at the time from people, but I interviewed her and I recall feeling a great deal of compassion for her. Imagine what state of mind a mother has to be in order to do this to her children. I remember more compassion than anger." More people were angry, just like I am, at the fact that Constance had been released and received that second chance to have more children, only to do it all over again. You have killed 6 children. So it was a very different Constance that entered the hospital in 1966 as opposed to the Constance in 1954. In 1954, she became involved with the patients and doctors and worked odd jobs inside the hospital. In 1966, Constance showed no interest at all in engaging the patients or staff. She watched television and mumbled to herself, and for 7 years, her condition deteriorated. Constance knew that she was never going to get out this time. Death would be the only release. Then one night, she was able to walk away from the hospital grounds. It was October 1st, 1973, and she just simply walked away. And her body was found 5 days later floating in the Kennebec River. So she finally succeeded in committing suicide. So after the deaths of his 6 children, Carl became a recluse. Yeah, no shit. Like, I would just be no good. He still visited Constance, but not nearly as often as before, and he continued working for the Maine Central Railroad. He died from a heart attack in 1990. Carl, Constance, and the children are all buried in the St. Francis Catholic Cemetery in Waterville, Maine. I had never, ever, ever heard of that story. I did Andrea Yates a long time ago at the beginning of my true crime on this channel. I don't even know what to say to that. Nope. No. No, 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 no. 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 Okay. So as you go about your day today, please remember, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little harder. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.